Charns of the Namaste Council and the Namaste Getaway. And the last video that I did was about yoga for senior citizens. And again, I don't like the word senior citizen because I am one, but today we're going to be talking about another stereotype because unfortunately, our society in the West tends to picture a yogi as a very young, very fit female, and that is so inaccurate, especially historically. And so in my prior video, and I please invite you to check it out, it's all about how you can do yoga until the day you die. And it talks about a lot of people who did yoga until their 90s and 100s. But what I want to talk about today is men and yoga, because for those who go to a traditional yoga studio, the classes do tend to be overwhelmingly female and overwhelmingly younger women. But it all depends on where you do yoga and what style of yoga you do. And to me, I've never liked stereotypes. I've worked in multicultural marketing my whole life, so I always try to break out of any stereotype, and I try to erase them and rebuild because I don't like stereotypes. So if you look at the history of yoga, of course it came from India, and traditionally all of the yogis were men, and it was something that was passed on one to another, and it was not a wide mass marketed type of a practice. It was a very spiritual practice, and men would oftentimes begin yoga at a different time in their life when they were ready to leave their family and begin a spiritual journey. And some of the famous yogis, if you think about them, they are all men, and there's a reason for it. And at the same time, counteracting that stereotype, there was a woman who was one of the first well-known female yogis who actually came from Eastern Europe. I can't remember if it was Lithuania or the Ukraine, somewhere around there. And she learned in India and then brought it to the West. But again, traditionally, it was a man's practice. However, if you look at how it is done nowadays, both in India and in the United States, it's very much equal access for everyone. And what I look at also is that in the school system, yoga is commonly taught in the schools, both in India and in the United States. And of course, when it's taught in the schools, it's 50% male, 50% female. And there's no reason why it should be for one sex or the other. It just doesn't make sense. There are also a lot of inaccurate stereotypes about body size. And if you look at some of the traditional yogis from a long time ago, they tended to be very small and very thin. But as they aged, they put on weight, which is normal. And they continued to do everything that they did when they were young and tiny. So I think that we have to also, think about body imaging when it comes to yoga, and I will be doing another video specifically about that. But I wanted to talk about one man who I have done a few courses with, and I had the opportunity to interview him, and I wrote 2 articles about him. And he was just a wonderful yoga teacher, and he was an NFL linebacker. And if you look at him today, his body still looks like an NFL linebacker, as opposed to what sometimes people think of as a yogi's body. And he was a successful NFL player, but he was in an accident. And as so many of us come to yoga because of accidents or because of injuries, he came to yoga because he had cervical spine, his cervical spine was squashed, and he had contusions that were, of course, debilitating and causing a lot of pain. So while he was an NFL player, you know, most people think of that as Mr. Macho, Mr. Powerful, Mr. Strong, and everything. And this person, he said, that's not really the case. It wasn't until he found yoga that he became powerful and strong. This man's name is Keith Mitchell. So I do invite you to check him out, Google him, or check out the articles that I've written about him on my website, the Namaste Council, COUNSEL. And one of the quotes that Keith said about his life as a football player and then as a yogi is he said, now, meaning as a yogi, now I have the power and strength from realizing I can transform energy that I tapped into in a sense of something that works a whole different way. So it really turned Keith's life around when he found yoga. And he's an incredibly wonderful yoga and meditation teacher. He's extremely spiritual now. And I have seen stories like this time and again. And among my students, I would have to say that I have a very large number of male students of all ages, young and old. One of my students, who was a very loyal, excellent student of mine, he definitely did not have the stereotype body type, but he came to the yoga and was so faithful because it was his cross training, and it made a big difference for him in his cross training. And again, yoga has very successfully been used among the NFL players. It's been used among the military for a long time. Yoga Nidra in particular, which is not a physical form of yoga, has been used very successfully among the military because it works to counteract anxiety and post-traumatic stress syndrome in particular. So there are so many different types of yoga, and yoga is for everybody. And I always say yoga is for everybody. It's for everywhere, anytime. And I believe that you should be able to do yoga anywhere. You don't need a studio. You don't need yoga gear. You don't need yoga apparel. You don't need yoga props. All you need is a little bit of time, whether it's 5-10 minutes to an hour or 2 hours, whatever works for you. And all you really need is the focus. So anyway, please check out my other videos and check out my website and my Facebook pages as well. I will put those links on the description. Thank you for joining, and please subscribe for more information or connect with me via social media. From my heart to yours, namaste.